What you see in the world is rarely just the world, it's a mirror. And the moment you understand this, not just intellectually, but deep within your subconscious, you begin to see everything differently. When you watch global events unfold, like America seemingly siding with Pakistan over India, it's easy to get emotional, feel targeted, or believe the odds are stacked against you. But this is where most people miss the truth. They react instead of reflect. They protest instead of process. What they don't realize is that these external events are neutral until we assign them meaning, and the meaning we assign them comes from our inner state of being. You must ask yourself, what is my perception creating right now? Is it helping me grow, or is it chaining me to fear and frustration? Because reality is filtered through your perception, and perception is colored by your mindset. Two people can see the exact same news headline, America strengthens defense ties with Pakistan, and walk away with two entirely different stories playing in their heads. One says, India is being isolated, we're being betrayed. The other says, we must rise, innovate, and lead like never before. Same information. Different consciousness, different result. The moment you surrender your emotional control to external powers, whether it's a foreign government or your local circumstances, you've already handed over your destiny. Because the real battlefield is not in Washington or New Delhi, it's in your mind. If you see yourself as a victim, you become one. If you see yourself as a creator, you become unstoppable. Geopolitical, the strategers peer, or it HOL, national DGIMEE over you, but about transcending them? Not emotionally attaching yourself to every perceived slight. That's the real power. People have been conditioned through media, education, even history, to react instead of respond. They've been trained to believe that their circumstances determine their state of mind. But let me tell you, it's the other way around. Your state of mind determines how you interpret your circumstances. And once you shift your internal state, the entire world appears different. The chaos outside doesn't dictate the calm inside, you do. When you hear that a superpower like America is aligning itself in ways that challenge your national interest or pride, you might feel anger, betrayal, confusion. These are natural responses, but you can't live there, because if you stay in that space, you're giving that news the power to sculpt your identity. You're reacting instead of creating. You're becoming a puppet to politics instead of a master of your own mind. And don't think this is just about nations and leaders. It reflects in our personal lives too. How many times have you felt someone sided against you? Maybe a boss promoted someone else. Maybe a friend supported your rival. The emotion is the same, the sting. The question, why not me? Why are they against me? That emotion, if left unexamined, creates a loop. A toxic loop of resentment, self-doubt, and victimization, and that loop becomes your lens. You no longer see reality, you see your version of it, shaped by your emotional bias. But here's the truth. Life isn't fair, and it's not supposed to be. Because fairness is not the foundation of success. Awareness is, and awareness starts with perception. If you change the way you see, you change what you experience. America supporting Pakistan may look like a problem, but only if you believe that external alliances determine your fate. What if instead you saw it as a wake-up call? A challenge to evolve, to rise, to become so internally powerful, so economically dominant, so spiritually rooted, that no alliance could ever suppress your momentum. That's the kind of mindset that rewrites the rules. That's the kind of perception that turns the underdog into the leader. And yet, most people choose to stay small because it's easier to blame than to build. It's easier to say, they're against me, than to say, I have to become more. But if you're going to change your destiny, whether as a person, a leader, or a nation, you have to take responsibility for how you see things, not blindly but consciously, not emotionally but intentionally. Your mind is the projector, the world is the screen. And if you don't like the movie, you don't scream at the screen. You change the film inside. That's the secret. That's the shift. And once you get that, you stop being disturbed by headlines. You stop wasting energy on blame. You start focusing inward, where the real transformation begins. Everything you experience, whether it's disappointment, betrayal, or global tension, is filtered through the story you tell yourself. If your story is one of power, growth, and purpose, then no external force can defeat you. But if your story is one of fear, comparison, and complaint, then even your victories will feel hollow. So ask yourself, is your perception empowering you or weakening you? Are you seeing what's really there, or are you projecting your past wounds onto present events? Because perception isn't passive, it's creative. It shapes your emotions, which shape your actions, which shape your results. The minute you understand that, everything changes. Energy flows where attention goes. It's a phrase that might sound simple, even poetic, but within it lies one of the most transformative truths of human potential. Whatever you focus on, whatever you obsess over, speak about, replay in your mind, is what expands in your life. When you keep your attention locked onto injustice, betrayal, favoritism, or inequality, whether in politics, business, relationships, or your personal journey, you unknowingly feed those very things with your energy. They grow because you grow them. They dominate your life because you made them the center of your emotional universe. Let's take this larger narrative: America supporting Pakistan, apparently at the expense of India. What happens when that story becomes your primary focus? When you talk about it over and over, post about it, argue about it, make it a source of emotional agitation, you're not just observing, you're participating. You're not just commenting, you're investing. You're feeding your most precious resource, your attention, into something that may never be in your control to change directly. And when you do that, you starve your goals, your growth, your vision. You get caught in a reactive spiral where your mood is determined by headlines and your hope is held hostage by foreign decisions. You weren't born to be a commentator. You were born to be a creator. And creators know that their energy is currency. They spend it wisely. They don't pour it into what upsets them. They invest it in what uplifts them. But most people don't do this. Most people become addicts of outrage. They wake up to search for something to be angry about because it gives them a rush, a purpose, a sense of being in the know. But that same pattern robs them of peace, focus, and growth, and eventually it shapes their identity. They're no longer builders of dreams, they're reactors to drama. You've got to understand how the mind works. It doesn't distinguish between a real threat and an imagined one. If you're mentally revisiting a problem again and again, why are they against us? Why aren't we being treated fairly? Why is the world not on our side? Your body responds as if you're in danger. You go into a low-grade fight or flight state. Cortisol spikes, clarity drops, creativity shuts down. You can't build your vision in that emotional state. You can't elevate your performance. You can't lead. All because your energy is being hijacked by a focus that doesn't serve you. And let's go deeper. Where your attention goes, your life follows. If you consistently place your attention on external conflicts, you start internalizing those conflicts. You begin to experience them in your own home, your relationships, your business. You find yourself getting more irritable, more defensive, more frustrated, not because of your circumstances, but because of your focus. You're carrying the world's weight inside your nervous system. You're reacting to things you were never meant to hold emotionally. It's not about ignoring global events. It's about positioning yourself differently in relation to them. You must decide, will I allow these events to occupy the space reserved for my purpose, or will I acknowledge them, learn from them, and then redirect my energy back into creation? Because the moment you become consumed by someone else's agenda, you've abandoned your own. This applies to every area of life. Think about how many people you know who are still angry about something that happened years ago. A missed opportunity, a betrayal, a situation they felt was unfair, and because their attention is still there, their energy is still there. They are stuck, frozen in time, trying to rewrite a past that no longer exists, and in doing so, they delay their future. They don't realize that if they simply pulled their energy back, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, they could redirect it into something new, something alive, something that moves them forward. Now scale that idea up to nations, to cultures, to entire populations. When a group of people fixates on injustice, they become emotionally entangled in it. They begin to define themselves by it. They form identities around being wronged, being oppressed, being overlooked. And while this may create a temporary sense of unity or purpose, it ultimately limits them. Because the energy that could have been used to innovate, to educate, to build, to rise has been spent on emotional resistance. The people who succeed on the highest levels mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually understand this truth. They don't chase fairness, they create impact. They don't give energy to what distracts them. They conserve it for what drives them. They know that every second spent on blame is a second stolen from building. Every hour of complaining is an hour not spent creating. Every thought soaked in resentment is a thought denied to possibility. That's why focus is more than just mental discipline. It's a spiritual principle. When you focus on growth, you grow. When you focus on fear, it multiplies. When you focus on opportunity, doors appear. When you focus on limitation, those doors vanish. Not because they weren't there, but because you couldn't see them through the fog of your emotional investment in the wrong narrative. So the next time the world tries to pull your attention toward fear, conflict, division, you must become more intentional. You must guard your focus like a warrior. You must ask, does this deserve my energy? Will this make me stronger, or will it weaken me? Will it bring me clarity, or cloud me in confusion? Because the answer to those questions will determine your future more than any alliance between any two nations ever could. There's a truth most people never realize in their entire lives. The seed of every setback holds the code of a comeback. It doesn't always look that way when you're in it. When the world turns its back on you, when decisions are made that seem to go against your best interests, when you feel pushed aside, left out, underestimated, your first instinct is to resist, to complain, to ask why me. That's the natural reaction. But greatness doesn't come from natural reactions. It comes from supernatural awareness, the awareness that every disappointment is an invitation. Every rejection is a redirection. Every setback is a setup. If you choose to see it that way, you have to train yourself to look for the code hidden in the chaos. Because life will test you, politics will frustrate you, people will betray you, systems will seem unfair. But if you spend your life reacting to everything that doesn't go your way, you'll miss the opportunity embedded in the pain. You'll miss the growth that only adversity can provide. You'll miss the brilliance inside the breakdown. Take the broader narrative again, America, aligning itself with Pakistan. It feels like a setback for India. Like a betrayal of democratic values, like power being used against progress. That's how it appears on the surface. But dig deeper, look wider, and you'll see something else. You'll see pressure being applied, and pressure, when applied to the right structure, creates diamonds. Setbacks are pressure. They compress your comfort zones, they confront your illusions, and they challenge you to evolve. That is their gift. Most people don't see the seed. They only feel the storm, and because of that, they stay stuck. But the ones who rise are the ones who say, "This isn't happening to me. It's happening for me." That single shift in thinking is what separates mediocrity from mastery. It's the mindset that built empires, healed generations, and turned loss into legacy. And don't confuse this with positive thinking. This isn't about ignoring pain or pretending everything's fine. This is about developing the wisdom to extract value from adversity. To recognize that when life closes one door, it doesn't leave you trapped. It hands you a set of keys, but those keys are hidden. You have to look within. You have to be willing to shift your focus from frustration to curiosity. You have to ask better questions, not "Why is this happening to me?" but "What am I meant to become because of this?" Because every setback is encoded with instructions, lessons about your weakness, your habits, your beliefs. It reveals the gaps in your thinking, the blind spots in your strategy, the flaws in your foundation. And only through pressure do those things become visible. When things go well, you get comfortable. When things fall apart, you get honest, and honesty is where transformation begins. This is true in every arena: personal, professional, national, global. The world doesn't reward those who cry loudest. It rewards those who evolve fastest. If your company loses a major client, there's a lesson in your process. If a relationship ends, there's a lesson in your patterns. If your country is diplomatically sidelined, there's a lesson in your strategic positioning. But most people don't look for the lesson. They look for someone to blame, and blame is a blindfold. It stops you from seeing the seed. It stops you from decoding the comeback. It's the same mindset that legendary entrepreneurs, athletes, and revolutionaries all share. When they fall, they don't collapse. They collect data. They observe, they ask, "What can I do better? What part of me allowed this? What skill, belief, or strength must I now develop?" And then they get to work. They rewire their minds. They double down on discipline. They outgrow the version of themselves that got stuck. That's the secret. That's the pattern. You don't avoid setbacks. You grow through them. You become someone stronger, sharper, wiser, more aligned. That is how the code of the comeback is activated. It's not activated by wishing for a better world. It's activated by becoming a better version of you. And once you do that, the external world starts to reflect your internal elevation. That's not just philosophy, that's law. It's how energy works. You shift your vibration, and the circumstances around you must eventually shift to match. But most people give up too soon. They misread the delay as denial. They interpret silence as rejection. They think resistance means the dream wasn't meant for them. But resistance is always part of the process. It's the test before the triumph. It's the storm before the strategy. You can't bypass it. You can only grow through it. And when you understand that, your whole life changes. You stop fearing setbacks. You stop taking them personally. You stop running from the pain. You meet it. You learn from it. You use it. There's a saying, some people break under pressure, others break records. The difference is mindset. The difference is perception. The difference is whether you look at the shattered pieces of your plan and say, I'm ruined, or I've just been given raw material for reinvention. The world will always throw curveballs. Policies will change. Alliances will shift. But the power to transform a setback into a comeback is yours and yours alone. It's not in the hands of foreign governments or global superpowers. It's in your hands. It's in your thoughts. It's in how you choose to respond to adversity. Because inside every disappointment there is a decision. A decision to crumble or to climb, to escape or to evolve. And the choice is always yours. You attract what you feel, not what you want, not what you dream about late at night, not even what you write down in a journal and forget. You attract what you consistently feel because your emotional frequency is the most powerful broadcast you send into the world. It's the silent message that shapes your outcomes, the invisible signal that aligns people, events, and opportunities to your life. And most people are completely unaware that they're broadcasting pain, lack, anger, or fear, and then wondering why life keeps returning the same patterns to them again and again. Think about it like this. Your emotions are not just private experiences. They are signals, frequencies, and the universe doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your energy. If you walk around feeling like a victim, like life is unfair, like everyone is against you, you will keep attracting situations that confirm that story. Not because you're cursed, not because the world hates you, but because your dominant vibration is set to lack, fear, and resistance. And energy is loyal. It returns to its source. Now, take a moment and zoom out to a national or collective level. If an entire population is locked into anger, jealousy, frustration over what other countries are doing, how they're forming alliances, how they're seemingly playing favorites, what kind of energy is being radiated, what kind of outcomes are being pulled in. You see, the more a society obsesses over them versus us, the more it invites more separation, more division, more emotional volatility. It's a loop, and unless you break the emotional pattern, the external pattern will keep repeating. You have to recognize that emotions are not random. They are trained, rehearsed, recycled. If you wake up and the first thing you do is check your phone, watch the news, feel disappointment, frustration, or irritation, then go through the day having conversations rooted in those feelings, you've now built an emotional script, and that script becomes your reality, not because life is against you, but because life is responding to you. So, what do you do when the world gives you every reason to feel negative? When a powerful country makes a political move that feels like a betrayal, or when someone you trusted chooses your rival over you, or when you're overlooked despite your hard work, you shift your frequency. You take control of the only thing that's truly yours, your inner state. That's where your real power is. Because while you can't control world events, foreign policy, or someone else's behavior, You can control your emotional response. And your emotional response is what shapes the next chapter of your life. When you dwell in bitterness, life gives you more to be bitter about. When you live in gratitude, life gives you more to be thankful for. When you carry a vibration of self-pity, you attract people and experiences that keep you feeling small. But when you step into confidence, into worthiness, into love, even when the world is chaotic, you create alignment. Things start showing up differently because you're showing up differently. This is not some vague motivational concept. It's energy mechanics. Everything in life has a frequency, from your thoughts to your relationships to your results. And your emotional frequency is the dial. If you tune it to fear, you'll hear more noise. If you tune it to faith, you'll hear clarity. But most people never adjust the dial. They keep it stuck on the same station for years, sometimes decades, and then wonder why nothing changes. Think about the people you admire, the ones who seem to attract abundance, opportunity, support, progress. They're not lucky, they're aligned, they've trained their emotions to match their vision. They don't just think success, they feel it. They embody it, and because of that, they live in a different emotional reality. They don't chase, they attract. And attraction starts from within. Now ask yourself, what are you really feeling day in and day out? Not just in public, but when no one's watching. Are you feeling empowered, or are you stuck in resentment? Are you feeling visionary, or are you reliving wounds because that feeling, that dominant vibration, is shaping your life more than any speech, any strategy, or any external alliance ever could? When you shift your feelings, you shift your frequency. And when you shift your frequency, your life starts catching up with who you've become inside. You begin to walk into rooms with a different presence. You start noticing solutions instead of problems. You find yourself guided to people, conversations, and choices that you previously couldn't access, not because they weren't available, but because you weren't vibrating on the right level. It's like tuning into a radio station. If you're on 88.3, but the music you want is playing on 104.5, it doesn't matter how badly you want that song. You won't hear it until you change the frequency. You could beg, pray, scream, or complain, but the signal won't shift unless you do. Your emotional frequency is that signal. It's your access point to a higher level of life. It's your key to transformation. And so many people are walking around with the right dreams but the wrong emotions. They want peace, but they feel anxious. They want love, but they feel unworthy. They want progress, but they feel like victims. And then they wonder why their life feels stuck. It's not their dream that's broken. It's their emotional alignment that's out of tune. So you must become the master of your emotional world, not by suppressing your feelings, but by reconditioning them. By noticing the stories you tell yourself, the thoughts you repeat, the states you live in. And every time you feel yourself drifting back into low energy, into jealousy, rage, or fear, you gently but firmly guide yourself back. Not because the outside world changed, but because you've chosen to operate on a higher emotional frequency than whatever chaos is happening around you. Reprogram your mind. Destiny is not a matter of chance, but of choice. Most people live their entire lives waiting for something to change, waiting for someone to recognize them, waiting for the right conditions, the right opportunity, the right connection to finally arrive and unlock their greatness. But waiting is not a strategy, it's a delay. And the truth is, Nothing outside of you holds the power to decide your future. It is the programming of your mind, your beliefs, your patterns, your self-image, that builds the blueprint of your destiny. You can't rise above your mindset, no matter how talented, how ambitious, how passionate you are. If your mind is wired for limitation, your results will reflect limitation. If your internal programming is full of doubts, fears, and disempowering beliefs picked up from childhood, society, or past failures, then your destiny will look like a loop of stuckness. People blame fate, politics, karma, or even God, but rarely do they look in the mirror and ask, what beliefs am I running on? Because your mind, like a computer, runs whatever code it's been given. And if that code says, I'm not good enough, the world is against me, or it's too late for me, then your actions will unconsciously align with that script. This is why people repeat the same mistakes, attract the same type of pain, live the same year over and over while calling it growth. They haven't changed their inner world. They've switched jobs, cities, relationships, but they're carrying the same mindset into new environments. And so the pattern persists. They think it's the world that's broken, but in truth, it's the inner programming that hasn't been updated. And here's the catch. Most of this programming isn't even yours. It was installed in you by your culture, by your parents, by the news, by school, by everything around you that whispered limits into your subconscious until you accepted them as truth. You were told what was possible and what wasn't. You were told who you are, what you're capable of, and how far you could go. And you believed it, not because it was true, but because it was repeated. Repetition is the tool of reprogramming, and whoever uses it on you shapes your reality. But the moment you become aware of this, you have a choice. You can keep running on the same software, or you can rewrite the code. You can audit your beliefs and ask, does this idea serve my highest potential, or does it limit me? You can begin the process of reconditioning your subconscious to support your vision, not sabotage it. This isn't magic. It's mental alignment. It's daily work. It's rewiring your thought patterns, replacing your doubts with disciplines, your fears with focus, and your excuses with execution. You see, everything you desire, impact, influence, wealth, peace, confidence, love, it already exists. Not in some distant future, but in the version of you that thinks differently. Because a new destiny doesn't come from a new location or a lucky break. It comes from a new mindset. That mindset creates new behavior. That behavior forms new habits. Those habits compound into a new lifestyle. And that lifestyle births a new destiny. It always starts in the mind. Take someone who feels stuck, unsupported, unseen. They believe they're trapped. They believe they have no power, and so every action they take, even the bold ones, are taken from that place of fear and scarcity. They don't ask for more because they don't believe they deserve more. They don't build because they think it will fall apart. They don't lead because they assume no one will follow, not because it's true, but because the internal programming is running the same old story. But imagine if that same person began to shift their internal dialogue. Imagine if they started feeding their mind with thoughts like, I create my reality. My past does not define my future. I choose growth over fear. I'm worthy of abundance. I attract the people and opportunities that align with my vision. At first, it would feel unnatural. The old program would resist, but with repetition, that new programming would take root. It would begin to change how they walk into rooms, how they handle conflict, how they respond to failure. It would upgrade their decisions, and decisions over time shape your destiny. You can see this on a collective level too. A nation can either be programmed for victimhood or vision. A society can be programmed to believe it's always under attack, or that it is the author of its own narrative. If the dominant mindset of a people is we are oppressed, we are isolated, or they are against us, then that becomes the identity. And identity drives behavior. But if the collective programming shifts to we are creators, we rise through innovation, we shape our future regardless of alliances, then that energy becomes contagious, and from that place a new kind of momentum is born, not one of protest but of purpose. It all comes back to choice. Every thought you entertain, every belief you accept, every emotion you allow to take root. It's a choice, and those choices accumulate. They form the architecture of your life. If your programming says you're limited, you'll keep hitting the same wall. But if your programming says you're limitless, you'll start to build doors where others see only barriers. So you must become ruthless about what you allow into your mind. Be selective with what you listen to, who you surround yourself with, and what you repeat to yourself daily. Because repetition is how you got programmed in the first place, and repetition is how you'll get free. Your subconscious doesn't care what's true. It only cares what's familiar. Make greatness familiar. Make self-worth familiar. Make excellence familiar. Then, without even realizing it, you'll begin to make choices that match that new identity. And slowly, steadily, your life will begin to reflect the new code. Not because chance gave you a break, but because you finally made the choice to reprogram your mind and take control of the direction your destiny was always meant to go.